The following is presented as an entertainment program emphasizing folklore. It is not intended as legal or medical advice in any way and should not be used to replace the advice of legal or medical professionals. New World Witchery is a Patreon-supported podcast. This episode is sponsored in part by listener Jamie. We're thankful that Jamie is helping us support our quest to enchant our bookshelves so that they can hold an infinite amount of witchy books. Thank you for your support. If you'd like to become a patron and help support the show while also getting some great perks, please visit www.patreon.com/newworldwitchery, where you can pledge $1 a month or whatever you can to help us stop these bookshelves from becoming sentient and flooding our homes with books. It's actually not that bad of a way to go, really. And thanks to all of our listeners.
Are you looking for magic? Maybe magic that lives right where you do?
If so, join us aboard our broomsticks and ride with us from the Atlantic to the Pacific, from the Yukon to the Yucatan, and find magic that's right outside your front door or just off of Route 66.
Whether you're in the Windy City or the Crescent City, the city that never sleeps, or the city of brotherly love, we've got enchantment for you.
I'm Corey.
And I'm Lane, and this is New World Witchery.
This time around, we're sitting down with one of our favorite authors, Judika Illes. Have you ever had to answer one of those "who would be at your historical dinner party" questions? Where you say that you want Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. and Cleopatra to all break bread and tell you about their lives and all of that. What if it were a witchy dinner party, though? Who would you want there? Maybe you look to mythological witches like Hecate, Circe, Baba Yaga, and others. Or you might turn to more historical practitioners of magic and witchcraft like Isabel Gowdy and Rosalie Norton, the famed witch of King's Cross in Sydney, Australia. You might ask people who raised suspicious eyebrows about their potential witchy activities to clarify what they did, and if they actually cast spells or not. Or you might bring in people like Gerald Gardner and Aleister Crowley as a way to get a handle on the evolution of modern witchcraft, and maybe yell at Crowley a bit about a few things too. But what if you could ask one person to that dinner party who would be a lot like asking a whole who's who list of witches? The person at the top of our list would probably have to be Judika Illes. She's one of our favorite witchy authors who has written massive encyclopedias of spells and spirits, guidebooks on witches in history and pop culture, and impressively down-to-earth spellbooks about using magic in everyday situations. She's had a hand in bringing numerous practitioners of folk magic into the book writing world in her role as an editor at Wiser Books. And she's even worked on things like card decks and almanacs too. She is, in short, kind of amazing. 15 years ago, we had the chance to sit down and chat with her, and we were starstruck then. Now, we get the chance to interview her again, ask her some of the questions we forgot way back then, and hear about the tides of witchcraft and magic as she's seen them in her life. I feel immensely thankful that I get to introduce you to her again here as our guest on New World Witchery. And I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hello and welcome back, Judika Illes. So glad to have you back on New World Witchery. It's been a while. I think we should say, for those who maybe are newer listeners, you were one of our very first guests almost 15 years ago, which
God.
It feels like a long time. I know.
Oh, I knew it was years. I wasn't thinking it was that. Oh, that's scary.
I know it's well, I mean, it's been a minute, right? So what have you been up to? What's kind of changed for you in that 15 years?
Oh, so 15 years ago. Well, I think that was either just before or just when I began working for Wiser Books.
Mm.
No, it would have been before, because this year, 2025, is my 10-year anniversary. So 15 years ago, did we talk about Mystics, Saints, and Sages?
I think that was one of because you were doing that one and the Gods, Goddesses. Like the two encyclopedias were pretty close to each
Right.
other.
I did too. So for those who don't know me, I I'm an American writer, but the book that I'm best known for, Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells, and we just celebrated the 20th anniversary of that book, was published by HarperCollins in the UK, and I did two encyclopedias for them. And then I began writing for Harper San Francisco in the US. And those are the two encyclopedias that we discussed last time. Encyclopedia of Spirits and Encyclopedia of Mystics, Saints, and Sages. I wrote a series of big books just back to back to back to back. And after I finished Mystics, Saints, and Sages, I lifted my head and looked around, and I had some personal stuff to take care of. My parents weren't doing well. And there were a couple years where I was teaching. I was going into stores and teaching, but I wasn't writing. I was just, taking care of my personal business. And then when my parents passed away, I had been joking for years with my editor of Wiser Books. I wrote a couple books for Wiser, and Wiser had also picked up some out of print books that I had written before 5,000 Spells. And I always joked with the editor. She used to send me books to endorse. In other words, to read them and say something nice about them. Like, for people who don't know what an endorsement is, when you open a book and there's praise from various sources, those are endorsements. And I would catch mistakes, not grammatical mistakes, but contextual errors, because I've been studying the magical arts since I could. And it's what I love, and it's what I read for pleasure, and it's what I talk about with friends. And I was catching these mistakes, and they were because they had hired copy editors and proofreaders who were great at the English language and could correct those things, but they didn't know the topics. They didn't really understand the specialized topics. And so things were slipping through their fingers. And I kept saying to her, Amber, you should hire me, because I can do English and I would catch these mistakes. And we joked about that for years. And then the opportunity arose, and it was sort of an experiment. They said, you want to try this? And I said, sure. And I became an acquisitions editor of Wiser. And, the experiment worked. Here I am. I find books, I edit books, and I'm also working on my own projects.
Yeah. And I mean, it's 10 years doing that. And I want to circle back to that. Well, actually, we can go and dive into it. I mean, you are an author yourself. And we're going to talk about one of your books here today, but I'm curious if you could speak to this, what it's like to write about witches, magic, witchcraft from kind of both sides of that publishing divide. Like, what do you wish more up and coming witchcraft authors knew before writing their first book, kind of as a publisher, as an acquisitions editor? And then how do you think about writing now since you've been on the publishing side of things?
Well, I think that having been an author is really an asset for me as an editor. It is sort of shock. People in publishing love books. That's a given.
Mm-hmm.
People don't go into publishing unless they have a deep attachment to books and reading. But almost no publishing professionals are also authors. So they haven't had my asset as an editor is I'm used to being edited, and I know what that feels like. And so I think I am a more sensitive editor than some, just because, I've had some really, really soul crushing experiences, and I try not to let that happen to the authors I work with. I love doing it because I love books and I love metaphysics, and I have to pinch myself sometimes. I'm so lucky. I work with Rachel Pollack. I spoke with Mary Kay Greer yesterday. These are my heroes. I work with Harold Roth. I work with Stephanie Roseberg. I work with brilliant people, and I get to work on these books from the ground up. I know what's coming out. Like I know what's on the horizon. So I love doing that. You have to be able as an author to get your own ego out of the way, because people submit manuscripts to me that might not necessarily be in line with my own thoughts or beliefs, but it's their book.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to let people have their, that's their book and their words, and you have to be able to let people have those. But I think that also as an author, that's easier for me, because I think there are editors who are frustrated authors. I mean, I've had them.
Mm-hmm.
I joke, this is what was with Fair Wind some years ago. The copy editor they gave me was a militant vegan, and I with the emphasis on militant, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a spell book that were some spells that involved, eggs, and her editing involved, and what will the vegans do? And what will the vegans do? Well, they won't do the spell.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, after that book, I went on to do 5,000 spells, where ironically I had the opportunity to say, and if you don't want to use eggs, you can use this, because
Mm-hmm.
5,000 spells is so big, I was able to use variations. Here's the variation that you can use if you don't want to use this material. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all an education, it's all an evolution.
Yeah, I mean, and that's such a. I mean, it's a good point that there is sort of an education that happens as an author. You show up,
Right.
and there's already the little bit of imposter syndrome, but you also are kind of the expert on the thing you're writing about. But the editor is the one who's going to help you refine how you convey that to somebody else. And you're right, it can be a very sensitive process.
Well,
But
it's a thing where it's a collaborative process.
Mhm.
If you don't want any kind of collaboration, and I sometimes wonder how fiction writers do it, because that is, very much a personal vision. You
Mhm.
really have to self-publish. And, the stigma of self-publishing doesn't exist anymore. The advantage of self-publishing, if that's the route you want, is you have total control. I mean,
Mhm.
you have to pay for everything too, but you do have total control. The beauty of publishing is that it is collaborative. And
Mhm.
if you are working with the right people, then that symbiosis of having the right writer, the right editor, the right artist, all these things together, you create this beautiful book.
Yeah, I love that point, that sort of collaborative component. And like you said, you've been working with Wiser now for 10 years. You've worked with, like you said, Rachel Pollack. That's wonderful. I know that you've had some books published through Wiser with like Laura Davila, the Romanistan podcast of
Oh, her
Jasmina.
work, her work is wonderful. I've
Yeah.
worked with her on both her books on Mexican sorcery and Mexican
Mhm.
magic, and I hope there will be more books in the future. She's really brilliant, and has a voice, and is bringing material to English readers that maybe they would not have access to otherwise.
Yeah, and it's really wonderful because I think that is something, not that publishing was ignoring, particular voices or anything necessarily intentionally, but that a lot of voices were getting missed.
Right.
But I think that has been a shift, maybe even in the last 10 years. I think you've been a part of that. And I'm curious, what you've seen, in terms of publishing on magic over the past decade, like which topics are, finding an audience that maybe they hadn't found before, or which topics are kind of emerging as like, topics of interest that, maybe were getting missed before.
Well, for would-be authors out there, I mean, I was told this when I was a would-be author too, to look at different publishing, look at the books on your shelf that you love, and who published them. That's
Mhm.
not something that most readers necessarily look at. You just, you might be aware of the author, you might be aware of the topic, or you like the cover, but you're not necessarily looking to see who published these. You've got 10 books, and 10 books you love that you just bought, and 6 of them were published by one publisher. That is telling you something about the editor's tastes.
Hmm.
When I wrote 5,000 spells, which is a whole story, because it wasn't supposed to be a 1,000-page book.
Mhm.
It wasn't supposed to be an encyclopedia. It was, we miscalculated. No one who worked on it was a mathematician, and we didn't calculate how many spells can you squeeze onto a page. So I wept through a lot of it. I was very sad. I didn't think anyone was going to read it. I thought the publisher, it had tripled in size. I thought they were going to cancel the project, and I didn't have enough money to give them back the advance. That was gone. And one of the reasons was because my love is folk magic, and back when I wrote it, that wasn't very popular. It was, if anything, sort of scorned. It was, it was, people called it low magic. There's high magic and low magic, and I just thought no one was going to like it or read it. But that is and I was so pleased to see the response, and so that maybe is my personal preference. And I come from New York City. I come from a diverse background. I have my own personal diverse background. I grew up amidst a lot of diverse cultures, and it's what interests me. And so I and in a lot of occultism, maybe a little bit more occultish. So I do look for that. I mean, when Laura brought the manuscript from Mexican sorcery, I jumped. That was amazing. I love that book. Before, as soon as she sent us the manuscript. And you'll see other publishing houses will do, and other editors. And of course we have other editors at Weiser, and they have other interests. So sometimes one of the problems, I'm not saying there aren't publishers out there. I think this is more of those really huge publishers who maybe, are they deliberately overlooking a topic? Maybe. That's not necessarily the case with us. If it's esoteric, we're interested in it. But sometimes we don't know what we're looking for until it arrives over the transom. And we do publish books that come over the transom, that just, unsolicited manuscripts. So if you have something and you think it's, unique, you send it in. Send it in, because we might not know we're not publishing. Our extent of lack of knowledge may be that we, it's not whether we're not publishing this deliberately. We don't know that it's out there. So send it. Your voice is important. Send it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you think about, the various kinds of folk magic that we kind of see, even just here in North America, and there's such a diverse array of it. And so much of it, seems to get, missed or overlooked, or because it's so culturally specific, people think like, oh, well, who would ever be interested in, in this little piece of culture? But the fact is, a lot of people are.
Well, I think also when you have like a family tradition or a regional tradition, and you don't see it represented in books, you might think, well, it's because nobody cares. But it might just be because no one has sent in, no one has offered a manuscript.
Yeah.
And I mean, we do work with, I am eagerly awaiting a new manuscript from Jake Richards, which is a pretty regional topic. And I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, absolutely. His work with kind of Appalachian folk magic is wonderful, and it's very specific. He's got a very specific voice, and he talks about very specific aspects of that. And I really like that. So,
in the beginning of 5,000 Spells, in the introduction, I write a little bit about the Greek magic, the Greek magical papyri from Alexandria, and it struck me. I read articles about it, and I am from New York, and Alexandria was a huge, metropolitan area in its day. Maybe the equivalent of the New York in its region, in its era, in that region. So the frustration of anthropologists who are, this spell has elements of Christianity and Judaism and paganism and oh, they're talking about Jesus, but they're also talking about Hecate.
Hmm.
And what is this? And they're so frustrated with it. But I'm from New York, and magical people like learning about magic from other magical people,
Hmm.
even if they're going to take it and they're going to use it in a different way. And there is sort of a anthropological axiom that nothing crosses a border faster than a magic spell.
Mm.
And I think that's very true. And so for people who are magical people, and it is maybe my asset as an editor in that, I came in through the back door. I was a magical person who became an editor. I didn't I didn't get a master's, and I didn't know you could get a master's in publishing. I didn't know that. So I'm always interested, tell me something I don't know. Because we are the people who want to know. And I think that is true of the magical community, witches, occultists in general. We want to know what we don't know. So if you know something that other people don't know, or that's limited to a region, there are people who will be interested.
Absolutely, yeah. It kind of makes me think that sort of crossing boundaries thing makes me think like if you want to get a conversation started in a room full of people from different cultures, you can either start with, what noodle dishes or dumplings do you like, and you
Right.
can talk about cooking, or what love
Right.
spells or evil eye breaking spells do
Right.
you know? And it's going to be instantly a conversation.
When I started writing, I mean, I still have a big unpublished manuscript on fertility work,
Hmm.
and everything but the clinic. And I would meet people, and both in New York, and I also lived in Los Angeles. I've always lived in places that are very urban and have a lot of people from different places and different cultures. I would ask people, so if you can't get pregnant, how do
Hmm.
what does your grandmother recommend that you do? And everybody's got a story.
Hmm.
Everybody's got a story. I mean, that might be a very, very female oriented story, but everybody's got a grandma who told you to eat something or drink something, or you got to lie in a certain way, or take this herb, or go to the shrine, or do something. But
Hmm.
those are the things. And ghost stories, people have got ghost stories.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hiccup cures, really. Everybody's got
And witch
hiccup
stories,
cures.
I mean, it is
Hmm.
it is I mean, going back to the witch is a compendium book. Everybody thinks they know what a witch is.
Hmm.
Everybody's got some kind of a story, whether it's a positive story, whether it's a negative story, whether witches are respected or whether they're denigrated, whatever that is. But pretty much all over the world, if you describe, a person who with magic, people people understand what you're saying, even though they may not react the same way.
Hmm. Yeah, and that terminology can get people hung up too. But you're right. It's stuff that people know the feeling of the stories. They know what they're talking about, kind of within the story.
Well, it's a problem in the English language
Hmm.
because and it's very interesting to look in different languages. How many specific words do you have for something? This is, 100 different words for love in Sanskrit, or
Hmm.
all the different words for snow in Inuit. Whereas, what do we have? We have snow, hail, sleep. We're done. A lot of languages, they have different words for magical practitioners who do different things. And I have a glossary of such terms in my bigger witch book, my Encyclopedia of Witchcraft.
Hmm.
But in English, we only really have the word witch, and or magician. Well, what is a magician? A magician is David Blaine, but it's also, you
Hmm.
call Aleister Crowley a magician. What is it? And witch, you range from Helena Blavatsky to,
To
you know,
Circe, right? It can
right,
be
to,
any of those.
the granny witches in Appalachia, to,
Hmm.
Harry Potter. I guess he's a wizard. And then, people use the word witch to, particularly insult women. And I see it used against political women in
Hmm.
particular, across all spectrums of the political world. I mean, I've seen it applied to Hillary Clinton in recent years. I've seen it applied to Condoleezza Rice.
Hmm.
So it has nothing to do with the politics. So I mean that one word is covering a lot of things, and you have to be careful because do people think witch is, a goddess, someone to be admired, or do they think you're like rummaging around in the cemetery desecrating their family's graves and, I don't know, eating fetuses? Like,
Right. Yeah.
uh, so when somebody says, "Are you a witch?" you better know what they mean because, so a lot of strangeness out there.
Right. Could have very different results depending on what you interpret that
Historically,
as.
it's been
Yeah.
dangerous to say yes to that question.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Well, and so you've written this book, which is a compendium for those who don't know. It's this kind of sweeping survey,
It's my
covers
mini
a lot.
encyclopedia.
It is, and it kind of introduces you to all different. One of the things I kind of thought was really charming about it is it sort of takes witches and says like, okay, well, we mean lots of different things by them. We're going to look at them mythologically. We're going to look at them in fairy tale and folklore. We're going to look at actual people who have
Right.
been a part of the history of witchcraft as well.
Right.
And what made you want to write this particular book? Why do you think these figures are so important to meet?
Because I love witches. I've always loved witches.
Mhm.
When I was, people ask me why. I don't know. I came this way. Like when I was a little girl, The Wizard of Oz was on TV once a year,
Mhm.
and it was a big deal. And everybody, there were no DVDs, there were no, streaming. If you missed it, like that was it. And so everybody would crowd around the TV to see it annually. I mean, I think that might be incomprehensible to somebody who's very young right now, but it was like a different world. But that movie has always made me very uncomfortable because even when I was 3, 4, 5, I understood that is a movie about killing witches, which is something that I was so happy when Gregory Maguire like explored that in the
Mhm.
in the Wicked books because I was happy to see that somebody else jumped to this, had the same understanding of it. The Miss Gulch is described as a witch. She's unpleasant. She wants to take the dog away. She's not a pleasant person. Although, I mean, she's been bitten by the dog, but look, we're going to skirt over that. But the house falls on a witch. Dorothy can't go home unless she kills the witch. I mean, it's, bring me her broom. I mean, it made me very, very uncomfortable. And I have always loved witches. Hansel and Gretel, too. I don't like that story because the witch dies, as opposed to, there's very similar. I mean, I don't want to keep sending you to another book, but the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, I have a section on fairy tales.
Mhm.
That's an encyclopedia that was it's like 800 pages, and this is my mini encyclopedia. But the story of Vasilisa with Baba Yaga.
Mhm.
Baba Yaga is eternal. She's in her cottage in the woods, on chicken feed. Even when she ends up, she may end up in a pot, but she's getting out of that pot. That finality, because history tells us, you know, witches have historically been the victims. We have been the ones persecuted, not
Mhm.
the persecutor. So I wanted to share that. I wanted to share my love of all things witch.
Hmm. Well, I think that comes through, and I love, like I said, I love that you're introducing us to so many of these these figures, but again, historical, mythological. Were there any particular figures, like one or two that you really wish more people knew, or ones that sort of surprised you as you were putting this book together?
This is an updated and new edition of an earlier book. And
Hmm.
why is it in this format? Because when I had written 3 encyclopedias and I was exhausted, and I mean, long story, but Encyclopedia of Spirits, which I think is probably my best-selling book now,
Hmm.
didn't sell fast enough for the publisher, not wiser. And they turned down a couple. I have a lot of outtakes from that book. They turned down an Encyclopedia of Angels. They turned, Household Angels were out that year. they turned down some other stuff that, I mean, they eventually came back to me and we did Mystic Saints and Sages, but, they came back like a year later and said, oh, do you still have that manuscript? And I say that because for people who are discouraged with their, attempts to be published, you don't give up just because somebody turns it down. Doesn't mean they won't come back 2 years later or a year later. And, oh, so you still have that, timing is a thing. But I was asked Wiser Books at that time had a series on, it was called the Field Guide series, the Wiser Field Guide Raymond Buckland wrote the first one, the Field Guide to Ghosts. And they said, do you want to write? And I was happy because they were short, they were fun. And I had been, laboring like, the Miller's Daughter and Rumpelstiltskin, like just laboring, turning like all these things into these 1,000-page books. And I tried to make the books fun, but I was not having fun. And I did 2 field guides, and the series didn't sell, and I think any of the books. And I was given the opportunity to revise the Field Guide to Witches and expand it. The first entry I did for the Field Guide to Witches way back when was an entry for the witch artist, Rosalie Norton, because I had originally written an entry for her for the earlier book. And for budgeting reasons, there were some cuts at the last minute, and she didn't make it into the book. And I always felt bad. I have an attachment to her, and I think she was treated very badly in her life and not appreciated. She was very much a brilliant woman. There is for people who are not familiar with Rosaline, there is a really nice documentary about her called The Witch of King's Cross, which I reference in my book. But look for Witch of King's Cross. She was an Australian witch. King's Cross is an area in Sydney. It's like the Times Square of Sydney. And so when I had the opportunity to write that book, she was the first entry that I put into that book. And one of the things that I really appreciated with my opportunity to revise is I was able to add my art witches, which I've never had a place to do before, because that is, I can teach somebody how to do a candle spell. I can teach you how to create a mojo hand. I can, there's, or other people can teach you, but witchcraft through painting, through art, is so personal and so individual. That has to come out of your soul and your abilities. Nobody can really teach you. This is how you cast a spell through a painting. And I'm fascinated. My sister's a painting, and I grew up with art as a painter, and I grew up with artists, and I wish I could paint better. And it fascinates me. So this book, I was able to, not just Rosalie Norton, but Lenora Carrington and Moyna Mathers, who was who was the original initiate, the first initiate of the Golden Dawn, and who I think is also very underappreciated. Valley Myers, who I saw once when I was very young in New York City, the Witch of Positano. But, she's just incredible. She's radiated, and I've never forgotten her. And so I was able to, I wish I could have added more. Remedios Varo isn't in the book, so maybe but all these, the ability to cast the spell, to create a magical life, and to do it through these talents, these very unique and individual talents. I'm very much in awe of them.
I love that. Yeah. And I mean, the whole Leonard Carrington, just the sort of mythological soup that she creates with her art, where you're just kind of like immersed in these mythological worlds with it. I think that's great. And people don't always realize that she was actually a practitioner and student of magic too. So.
Yes, exactly.
So it all kind of fits together, and it's really wonderful, and I love that.
And Valley Myers, who's just the prototype of the witch in the woods. She's also originally from Australia. She goes to Paris. She saves up all her money as a teenager to go to Paris to become a dancer. But only to discover it's like right after World War II. It's very depressed. And she can't just, enter a ballet school. And so she, is living with refugees and learning, dancing on the street and in the streets and on the street. And eventually she has to leave. Her visa's out. She ends up in Italy and she starts this nature preserve that still exists. And so she's living, she and, a lover or a partner, are living sort of alone with all these animals. And they, there's all these wonderful pictures of her with her fox, who she described as her favorite daughter, Foxy, and she paints this, and she's just, it is the witch in the woods that you hear in a fairy tale. Well, Valley Myers lived that life by choice.
And and it becomes this, she's sort of creating her own legend around herself and doing that. I love that.
And living a very uncompromising, she has a vision, and it's a very uncompromising vision. She's going to be who she is, and she was.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you point that out within a few different folks and people approaching that different ways. Like I think about, Leo Martello, and sort of that same uncompromising in a different way, sort of like the advocacy component of things. So like you really hit that in a lot of different perspectives here. So
it's like a family. Like, people aren't perfect, and people certainly have their flaws. But like, think of, people like, who you might not agree with everything, but you're a family. And I do see myself as a member of this family of magical practitioners and esotericists. And I do feel that community. I love writing about Sybil Leek. I remember her, I remember Leo Martello, he was alive when I was, he was a New York City practitioner. I know people who knew him. But, Sybil Leek, who I saw in, the Mike Douglas show or Merv Griffin or these talk shows of my youth that no longer exist, and I read her autobiography, I Am a Witch. That was radical at that time.
Yeah, and it does give you a sense of you belong to the continuum of that story, of that narrative of what witches are and who they are.
Yeah. And I hope to share that.
Yeah.
Because often, depending where you are, who you're with, to be a witch or to be attracted to witchcraft is often involves feeling very alone and isolated. Even sometimes when you're in a coven, even if you're in a place where there's one style of witchcraft, there's one way to do it, and it doesn't, in your heart, that's not really your way. I wanted to show that there are many ways. There are many ways to be a witch. There are many authentic ways, not just one way. And there are people who lived different lives and had different goals and interests, but what we share, Catherine de Medici, who was openly, she was a woman of power, but was as openly practicing witchcraft as she could, and and taking care of astrologers and magical practitioners. Countess Erzsébet Báthory, who was, people, call her the Blood Countess. She was also, was she a serial killer? Yeah, probably. Absolutely, not someone to emulate, but she protected her local witches and got in trouble for it.
Yeah, in some ways, it's almost like being a part of the Addams family, where you have some very strange relatives.
It's the nicest thing my ex-husband ever said to me. I mean, I grew up watching the Addams Family. I love the Addams Family. We were living in Tarzana, and I think I complained that our neighbors treated us. They looked at us like we were weird or something. they were treating us like we were the Addams family. And he looked at me and he was, he's not necessarily a gentle person, but at this moment he was very gentle. And he said, Judika, we are the Addams family.
You're like, I can do that. I can accept that. That for me. Yeah. Well, I'm curious, I feel like I have seen, I mean, I don't know if you've seen this too, but it feels like there's been a real like witchcraft boom in recent years. We've got, people love Elphaba and Wicked. They love Agatha all along. Sabrina Spellman has had a second run at things, right? Why do you think this is happening? What's going on? Why are witches so prominent?
I think it's title. Well, I mean, it could be in response to various things, but numbers are a scary thing. Like I can't believe it's been 15 years since we last did this. But I turned 64 this year, and in my heart of hearts, I'm still 14. So where do those 60 years go? 50 years go? When I saw the Addams Family and Bewitched, I saw it on TV when it was, the first time it was on TV. So I have a bit of a perspective. The first time I saw Helena Blavatsky was, I want to say maybe 67, 68. She was on the cover of McCall's magazine. It was like it was the equivalent of a ladies' home journal. And they did they had a, what do you call it?
Like a special issue kind of a.
Yes, they had a special issue focused on the rise in witchcraft and the occult. And I think I still have the magazine. It made a huge impression on me. And every so often we do have these waves of interest in witchcraft and esoterica. And then it recedes. And I think when I moved back east in 2001, I had been living in California. I needed a job, and I got a job at a mall in Paramus, New Jersey, home of the mall. And they had a Borders books, all these things, McCall's magazine, Borders, like they don't, all these talk shows, they don't exist anymore. I'm talking about ghosts, but they had a Borders, and I had a job because I needed a job, and they made me take lunch. I was working in a store because I'm a certified aromatherapist, and I can scout, I can sell, which in New Jersey means selling skincare if you're lucky. And I did. So I would go to the Borders during lunch so I didn't spend money, so of course I go to a bookstore, but I would just look around. And at that time they had like 4 shelves, tall shelves of metaphysical books. And I was so impressed. And like 6 months later, they had 1 shelf and the rest was manga, because that had become popular. So I am a little cautious. Age of Aquarius, is this going to be it forever? I don't know. There are times when it becomes very popular and, it attracts people. And I think every time more and more people stay, more and more people's interest becomes something like mine. It's permanent. But other people will move on to whatever the next fad is. It's about power to me. I mean, when you come down to witchcraft, what is witchcraft? What are the things because witchcraft in different cultures and different eras, it's different. Like, it's very shocking going back to the Greco-Roman papyri, because now, like, if you are learning witchcraft post like 1970s, it's like Gerald Gardner and it harm none, the Wiccan Reed. But let me tell you, they were not shy about harming people back then. So sometimes it's a little jarring. And it's, well, that's not really witchcraft. Well, yeah, that was really witchcraft, then and there. And there isn't one type of witchcraft to the exclusion of others. That's like, there are sects of Christianity that will tell you we're the only Christians. That's the same kind of a mentality. There are many diverse ways, but if you want to bring it down to the basics, power and knowledge.
Mm.
And I think when we feel powerless or disempowered, and I mean, and it might not be feeling, we might actually be disempowered. And we feel that we don't really know what's going on. We want to know more. We want to have control over our own lives. We want to, Valley Myers, we want to live the way we want to live. I think that for some people, witchcraft becomes really crucial.
Mm. And I mean, the image of the witch, I think, still remains evergreen, right? It's one of those images that stays with us. As I mean, your book really illustrates that. You can go to antiquity, you can go to the 1700s, you can go to yesterday.
Sure.
There's a witch. There's a witch for
Sure.
your time. So, and
I mean,
love
you can
that.
go to, Rome pre-Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
There is a sort of fallacy that Christianity emerges and all of a sudden everything becomes not witch friendly. But pagan Rome was not friendly to magical practitioners.
Yeah. You think about the well, and some of the magical practices were not very friendly.
Oh
either.
yeah,
Yeah,
but now too. I mean, that's there are
right.
I mean, there are magical practices that maybe are not that magical.
I just think about the ones that were like doing the lead tablet de ficciones and like cursing their least favorite chariot driver and things like that.
Well, that's still that. I mean, they're not maybe using lead tablets, but
for sure.
Yeah.
No. Well, I'm curious, with witchcraft kind of developing the way that it has, what are you, as you kind of, you're looking back, you've seen sort of a lot of history of witchcraft. What do you, see kind of in the future for witchcraft? What would you like to see? What would you like to see people writing about, practicing, sharing, doing with witchcraft in the future?
I think that what witchcraft does is anything that exists can be used in a spell. And I think as technology develops, as new, I love a mortar and pestle, and that's probably the most ancient magical tool there is.
Mm-hmm.
But I know people casting spells with emojis, and all sorts of technical things. So I think we're gonna. I am always in awe of the creativity and inventiveness, and I hope to see more of that. And witchcraft to me is about freedom. And that's something, I have Aquarius rising, and that's something that's important to me personally. I don't like being boxed in. I think I do share that in common with a lot of witches. I don't like being, I'm a very law abiding person. I stop at, I stop at stop signs early. I mean, I do all of that, but I don't like being told what to do. What I would like to see, I would like to see more people expanding the knowledge. I'd like to see explorations of the ancient world that, we've lost so much material. I love working with Harold Roth. Harold Roth goes back and looks at these old manuscripts and really, I mean, I work with Sarah Mastros on Sorcery of Solomon also, to look back at these old manuscripts and be able to look at them with clear and fresh eyes and to put them into, cultural contexts and really understand what they are, as opposed to doing something, just by rote. Like, I teach spellcasting and I tell my students, I share this here. Don't use words you don't understand. You don't know what you're saying. Why are you saying it? So you should always understand what you're saying. And if it's, if you really want to use this, archaic but resonant word, find out what it means. And for me, research is something sacred. I love the researching more than I personally love writing. Writing is work for me. Researching is spiritual archaeology. I love it. Don't just read one source. I think a lot of people don't know how to research anymore. You go on the internet and, what is this? And it spits out an answer. Okay, you think you know it. You don't. Explore, go down the rabbit hole. That I'd like to see people exploring the older material, maybe that hasn't been written about in culturally sensitive ways.
Mm.
And, I'm thinking about Sarah Masters' Sorcerer of Solomon, where, you have these seals that have Hebrew in it, and they are, they're old and they're in manuscripts, but they're used by people who can't read Hebrew. Therefore, the seals have become, Sarah rectified it in her book, where, you're copying things, but there's an error in it and you don't know there's an error. So find a source like Sorcerer Solomon that can say, oh yeah, this doesn't work because this is not how that language works. And I'd also like to see people exploring new things, all this the new technology, the new ways of being. Like, what are we doing with it magically? I'm interested in a lot of stuff. I personally, I read a lot of different materials, and you shouldn't be afraid to. There's magic everywhere. It's not just in books that are officially magic books. Read a travel book, read a mystery, read a cookbook. You'll find magic in those pages too, even if you might have to look a little. Sometimes you read a book and there's like don't just read books that validate what you already know. Go find new stuff. It's like exciting.
Absolutely, yeah. It makes me think of, there's a book by an author named Tamar Adler called An Everlasting Meal, where it's just sort of chronicling cooking one meal and then using the remnants of that to make the next meal and following it and following it and following it. And how that, for me, was very influential on the idea of magical practice and like moving things. Yeah. And it's that, it's a cookbook. It's like a cooking memoir, and yet somehow also a book about magic. And I think that you kind of have pointed at that. I like your whole point about spiritual archaeology. I love that. It's beautiful.
One of the things I wanted to do with witches is just share. There's a lot of, it's timeless. You can find witches from every era. You can find witches from all over the world. If there are people, there's going to be a witch. And even if it's not exactly the way you practice, but just being exposed to all these different people, and witches come in all sizes and shapes and colors and genders, and just to see the diversity and the variety and the creativity, I wanted to share my love for that. And and there's the crazy independence that, I identify with that. I sometimes have in my lifetime done things that maybe appear illogical. They were illogical. They were not necessarily the sensible, conventional thing to do, but it enriched my life, and it was the life I wanted to lead. And I do see that in a lot of people who identify as match. I don't even want to use the word witch, because that word evokes a lot of different reactions. And there are, a lot of hoodoo workers. They're workers. They're not witches. We're all magical practitioners. And I'm very grateful and proud to be in this community. When I finished 5,000 Spells, that was my, I didn't know how I was selling. Nobody told me. I thought no one was going to, I signed up to do another book right away before, I was very naive. I didn't, what did I know about pre-orders? I thought before the publisher realized I wasn't going to sell any books, I better sign up for another book. But, I felt that I had earned my place in the great afterlife of magical practitioners. I had earned my seat at the table. And I think that is maybe something for people to strive for. Like earn your place at the seat at that table. Because who doesn't want to sit in the afterlife with, Helena Blavatsky and the Witch of Endor,
Mm,
all the magic practitioners around the world.
right. Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't have to be writing a book. It can be just living an
Right,
uncompromising life or creating art
right, right.
that
No,
fuels
no,
that
no,
magic. Yeah.
absolutely. Not everybody's a writer. There are a
Yeah.
lot of ways, the cliche, you have to do you, but you do.
Mhm.
You have to be your authentic self. I am a person who English is not my first language. And it took me a long time to learn. I mean, I wasn't a confident public speaker until I wasn't a confident private speaker until I was in my 30s. So, I
Mm.
mean, I could not, I mean, at age 16 or 26, the thought that I would be sitting here talking with you in this context would have been shocking to me. But I learned to write because writing is less stressful for me than
Mm.
speaking. But we all have our gifts. I mean, the art witches, they didn't write books.
Mm.
They created paintings, they created art. So, there are cooking witches, or carpenter witches, or,
Mm.
metalwork. I mean, there are some of the earliest magical
Oh,
practitioners are
absolutely.
metalworkers.
Yeah. Yeah. Smithing has so much
Hmm.
magical lore in it for sure.
Right. And it continues,
Yeah.
herbalists.
Hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, and I think you're right. Like there's so many ways that you can be at that table. And I love that.
Right.
I'm curious, one, I'm glad that you have found your voice, have gotten your place at the table. And I'm really glad that we've had the opportunity to talk to you at least twice, who knows how many more in the future, but,
I
um,
hope we don't have to wait 15 years.
but I'm curious, what's coming down the line for you? You've just done this book. I know that you are always busy. You have shoe boxes full of notes and materials.
I do.
So
Well,
what's
what's
next for
coming up
you?
next? I do. I have my own projects. I have editing projects for people that I'm working with. My own projects. I mean, it's up on my next thing is a deck of cards, spell
Ooh.
cards. So, and I have another deck project that's in the works that it's too soon to talk about. But if I've done a little deck, no book, which is unusual for this. No book, 36 protection spell cards. It's
Mm.
up on Amazon. You can pre-order it, or you can, if you prefer to work with a, independent retailer, you could ask, even if you don't see it on their shelves, if you have an independent witch store or bookstore, if you tell them that you want something, I would like to buy this and I would like to buy it from you, they
Hmm.
can get it for you. You might have to wait a little bit longer, but they can get it for you. And, we have to support our witch stores
Yeah.
because the economy is not so great. So we need to protect them. They are the hearth fires of the witchcraft community.
Mm. Yeah, that was something when I released. I think it was the complete guide. One of the things I had people doing was saying like, "Hey, tag which stores you're getting this from. Let us know what the local
Yeah.
stores are," because it was such a regional guide. It was like, let's see where people are actually buying this book, and that, I mean, anything you can do to help support the local
Right,
bookstores is a good
right,
idea.
right,
So,
right. I mean, and different publishers are different. Weiser will,
mhm.
for if there's a business, Weiser will wholesale, and they will sell. You can just buy a couple. You don't have to, have $1,000 order. You can just get a couple of things,
Mhm.
and they will still wholesale it to you. So, I'm sure that's true of other small publishers. But yeah, protection spells. That's in it. That'll be out in June.
I love
So
that. Love that. Well,
that's
we will
exciting to me.
let folks know about that. Put some information up on that as well. Judika Illes, thank you so much again for joining us here back in New
Thank
World
you, Corey.
Witchery.
This is fun.
15 years may seem like a long time to some, or the blink of an eye to others. But for us here, we are deeply grateful that we get the opportunity to speak with people like Judika Illes in that time, because there really is so much we learn every time we chat with her. We hope that you enjoyed our conversation and that you'll go check out her many books and projects, which we'll provide some links to in our show notes. Our immense thanks to Judika for joining us here again on New World Witchery. If you'd like to share your thoughts on this or any other episode, we welcome you to do so by emailing us at compassandkey@gmail.com, or you can email us at newworldwitcherypodcast@gmail.com. Both of those should reach us. And if you want to leave comments on the episodes, you can do that. Most of them, we can leave comments on, I think, Apple Podcasts, Spotify for sure. That's where we're hosted now. So feel free to leave us comments there as well. And we generally try to read those and respond to those if we can, or at least, give them a like when we see them there. That's, we like to interact if we can. And if you would like to interact with us via any of our social media or find out about where we're going to be and the projects that we're doing, I'm going to be at several different events between now and early 2026 doing presentations on different magical topics. So I'll be at Mystic South with Lane. Lane will be there too. And then I'll be at the Salem Witchcraft and Folklore Festival in mid-August or so, talking about magic in nursery rhymes and fairy tales, things like that. And then be over at Sacred Space Between the Worlds in the DC area come next February. So I'm going to be around a lot of different places. So if you're interested in that, you want to find out more about those events, you want to just find out where we are on the internet in general, you can go to newworldwitchery.com/find-us. And that'll give you links to our social media and all kinds of other stuff too. So you can find out more about our work with folk magic, get access to our back catalog of episodes, read over 200 articles on folk magic, and more at our website, www.newworldwitchery.com. And if you should feel so inclined, you could always help support the show with as little as $1 a month or whatever you can afford. You can do that at patreon.com/newworldwitchery. You get some fun perks. We're going to have that community going for quite a long time. We hope at least so. And we're going to be offering some other stuff through there. So keep an eye out for all that if you want to go visit our Patreon site as well. If you can't afford to financially support us, we totally get that. If you can, let people know that you heard us, that's always a huge plus. Share us around on social media or just, interact with us if you can. That's always helpful. And that will about do it for us this time around. We look forward to talking to you again very soon. And until then, thanks for listening. Be well. New World Witchery is a production of New World Witchery Podcasts and is released under a Creative Commons Share and Share Alike license. The title and closing music for this episode is Woman Blues by Paul Avgiernos, licensed from AudioSocket.